I found a survey a few years ago that I wanted to repeat. It's called Surprising Greatest Fear in Life. Usually there's kind of these jokes about what's the greatest fear and, what can't we escape? It's death and taxes. And then the third greatest fear is public speaking. So I've seen that in people. They're very competent, but to think about getting up in front of a small group, it just terrifies them. This survey, which is a very modest survey, it was from a consultant from Sweden, asked 65 people, so it's a very narrow band, but I think it may tell us something. People were asked, what's your greatest fear in life? As you might expect, people mentioned the fear of dying alone or of losing my job. But of these 65 people, at least 14, so that'd be about 1 in 5, expressed a different fear. Living a life without purpose or meaning. Listen to their own words. Anthony from New York City. My greatest fear is never taking a risk in an effort to find my true calling. Rebecca from Germany. My greatest fear is to go through life living small and not realizing it until it's too late. Danielle from Sacramento, my greatest fear would be missing out on my purpose here on earth. Luciana from Portugal, to go through life without leaving a positive mark. Ralph from New Jersey, my greatest fear is regretting all that I didn't do as I lay in my hospital bed as an elderly man. I'm assuming this morning that most of us would like to die believing that we've made some difference in this world. At least we've made a difference for a few people. If not, maybe you've become cynical about, really achieving much in this world, especially for the Lord. Either way, God has something to say to you, something to say to us. The challenge of finding purpose and meaning is that we don't have a really good way to measure it. We don't have a tool, an instrument to measure whether or not we've had an impact or influence on the world. The typical measurements in our culture and our world is, if they build a statue in your likeness somewhere, a building with your name on it if you donated bukus of money towards it, your name in history books and biographies, making the cover of Time magazine or some kind of magazine. Perhaps a state or a national award with a plaque or trophy, CEO or president of an institution, company, promotion above your peers, or, the cliche gold watch after 40 years. For many of us, the recognition of a job well done may be a few cards, the Hallmark cards someone gives us, or even cheaper cards. Even Hallmark, you could get those pretty cheap sometimes now too, if you go to the right place, dollar store. And just, for your info though, it looks like you've spent a lot of money, but you really haven't, so I shouldn't have said that, it wasn't. And a cake at the end of your career. Normally, the soaring heights and bright lights are reserved for only a very, very few, and they find it only briefly fulfilling. As it turns out, God has much to say about our purpose, but we may not be accustomed to hearing it in terms of our vocation. And I want to talk about your vocation, your job, your career, those sort of things, and how God is working in that, because that applies to all of us. So I wanted us to think about the importance of an ordinary life. An ordinary life, that's most of us, all of us, that is lived among other people. And I want to begin with a statement by Jesus to people simply listening to him. We call it the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus gone up on this hillside, is sat down, a great crowd around him, and he begins teaching them. First of all, we have what are known as the Beatitudes, the blessed, how blessed you are if such and such and such. But then pretty quickly he gets to this statement, and I just want you to listen to it this morning as though you're there. You're sitting on the grass, sitting on a rock, and listening to this rabbi that has some of it's kind of new, some of it's old. And he says to you, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father who's in heaven. Just try to imagine that scene. I've kind of began with you sitting down there listening, and Jesus has drawn attention to the radical ways to know if one's blessed, which is totally different than even Jewish way of thinking and Gentile way of thinking. Blessed are the poor in spirit, and on. And then he says to the people sitting there, to you, now I want you to know you are my messengers for this new way of life. You are the light of the world. Of course, there are a lot of implications and responsibilities involved, but it seems Jesus wants people to first hear, you are light. I don't know if he paused a long time for that to let it sink in. We just kind of read it quickly. Jesus wants this ragtag group of people with all levels of spiritual interest and maturity to believe they are light. That is a lot to take in. Imagine Jesus saying that to you, to us this morning. I think there are a lot of objections in our hearts about ourselves, maybe about others, like, yeah, I don't know. I think we have that default. But let it settle into you. Just kind of don't fuss with it this morning. You're light. Without protesting too much, without listing all your faults, running through your mind all your faults and all your failures. Because this is how God begins with people. From Genesis to Revelation. It begins with God's initiative and telling his people who they are and then asking them to live like that. It's an astonishing approach because in almost every arena of life I can think of, we must prove ourselves before we're given a task. And there's a lot of common sense in that, of course. You don't want somebody that's just doesn't have any training as a pilot to fly the plane you're in, you know. But God's approach is just different. He says, you're this, now do this, now be that. I'd like you to kind of just momentarily, I won't pause here long, but what you're thinking, just kind of be aware of what's in your heart, what you're thinking and feeling about Jesus' statement. That you're light. You're light. You are light. Jesus wants us to feel his affirmation and his commission to us. You have a mission, you have a purpose in this world, and it is to live a life that will cause others to notice and be attracted and glorify God. It's not about being attracted to us, it's pointing the way to the Lord. And this life, I want you to hear this, has the backing and empowerment of Jesus himself. When Jesus says you're light, it's not solely dependent upon him, but upon his work within us. So it's more than just, I'm not a very good light. It's, that because there's something greater. What would that life look like? Much of the Bible is spent in those kind of exhortations about what that life is like, Hebrew scriptures, Christian scriptures. and Sermon on the Mount, if you want to just keep reading that. But for this morning, I want us to look through 1 Peter. Because 1 Peter has a strategy for living the Christian life in what was a very unfriendly environment then. I want to qualify it a bit because I don't think it's exactly a parallel situation in America for what they were experiencing in Asia Minor. It was more severe, and then it got more severe when Revelation is written. But there can be challenges for us, and Peter's advice lands well for us. So we're going to start in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 1. First of all, and I'm going to kind of go through these almost like a bullet list. I'm not going to flesh them out much, and so leave it to you to consider. So I'm just going to kind of go through them a bit. First of all, we must acknowledge that we at times will feel out of place in our world. And if we don't ever feel out of place, that may say something. Peter writes, an apostle of Jesus Christ to God's elect, chosen, exiles, strangers, scattered throughout the provinces of Asia Minor. I've inserted that. I'm not going to read all these countries because you may not know what they are. It's Turkey. That's where this is. Who have been chosen according to the foreknowledge of God the Father through the sanctifying work of the Spirit to obedience to Jesus Christ and sprinkled with his blood. So this combination Father, Son, Spirit together is you'll often see in these texts. And then what he wants for them, grace and peace, be yours in abundance, even in a tough situation. So the people to whom Peter is writing have grown up in these towns and these villages in Asia Minor. They're not immigrants that have moved there for the most part. They have the same language, they know the same customs, they participated in the same activities for a lifetime, for generations. But now, because they have chosen to follow Jesus, and Jesus has chosen them, there is friction. And sometimes they are out of place in their family get-togethers, or their communities, or the workplace. They are not immigrants, but they feel like immigrants, that they've come to a country that they've grown up in, and now they're estranged. And people are suspicious about them. They feel like they're not in their own homeland anymore, and they are treated sometimes with ridicule by family and neighbors. So they're feeling out of place with the values in our world, and so for the experience, feeling out of place with the values in our world is a normal experience for a Jesus follower. Secondly, our hope and joy must be rooted in the resurrection of Jesus in heaven. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth, speaks of the new birth. It's into a living hope, not just a hope. Notice the adjectives. A living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's what our hope is in. Jesus, his death, resurrection, ascension from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish. It's kept in heaven for you. It is a safe place. All this is reserved for us in a place that cannot be destroyed. It's a living hope for the future that gives resilience, and it gives purpose to the present. Then 3, our focus must be on the grace Jesus gives that leads to obedience. Verse 13. Therefore, with minds that are alert and sober, set your hope fully, completely. Again, these adjectives, adverbs about set your hope. And he doesn't just say set your hope on the grace. He says you set your hope fully, completely on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. Isn't that something? Now, I probably grew up, and maybe some of you have, or many of you have, so that Jesus coming is something going to be pretty terrifying. Well, yes and no. For those that have linked their lives to Jesus, a great thing to look forward to. And it is not, just imagine, there's a part of me that imagine when Jesus comes, he's going to say, now, you know, you messed up badly. And but Peter's way of thinking is, you look forward to it because you expect when Jesus comes, he will extend grace to you. And you put your hope completely on that. And I just love that image. And then it leads to obedience. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy. Why? Because God's holy. And you're his people. You're his child. Notice, just a side point, how grace and obedience are connected. This is true from throughout the Hebrew and the Christian scriptures, and it's just a false dichotomy to pose grace and obedience in opposition to each other. The Bible just does not do that. They are seen together. We may have a hard time figuring, well, how could that be? But we cannot depend, obviously, on perfect obedience. That's impossible for salvation. But neither can we disconnect grace from striving to follow Jesus, to obey him in all things. Number 4, we must embrace our identity and mission. Now, again, being light is where we're headed with this. Chapter 2, verse 9. But you are a chosen people. Notice that language of identity, of saying what they are. Now, don't imagine that these are Christians, just all perfect, mature Christians. No, not at all. But they are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession. That's what you are. That's how God sees you. We may be, cynical about that, but that's what he calls us. And then the mission flows out of that you may declare the praises of him, to praise him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So who are we? Who are you as light? Well, you're an ambassador. You've been appointed. You've been selected. You've been chosen. You've been ordained to be an ambassador for Jesus. We represent the King of the universe to the world that desperately needs reacquaintance. I guess I would just pause here a bit and for you to think a moment of somebody you know who needs reacquaintance with the Lord. There are all kinds of people. Reacquaintance with him and how marvelous he is. You are Jesus' representative in this world. Jesus wants all hands on deck. Jesus wants every follower to live for him and speak for him in their circle of influence, large or small. And then fifth, how do we kind of live in our world? This is simple. You do the right thing. You do good. These two phrases are over and over again in 1 Peter. How do you behave? You do what's right. You do good over and over and over again in every circumstance, with every person, with every responsibility. Chapter 2, verse 11. I urge you, here's the language again, as though you're living and you feel like a foreigner, you feel like an exile, you feel like a stranger in your hometown, you feel like an immigrant in your hometown, then you abstain from all the kind of stuff that's going on, all those sinful desires, which, they're still waging war in us, right? I mean, we got this stuff going on in us still. But live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, which sometimes happens because people don't understand, that they may see your good deeds and do what? Glorify God. Does that sound familiar? On the day he visits us. Submit yourself to the Lord's sake to every human authority, whether the emperor, supreme authority, governors, those who are to punish those who do wrong, commend those who do right, For if it is God's will that by doing good, you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish people. So strategy for being light, being God's people, whatever the situation is, do good, do right. You have to figure it out on the go. Whether it's the government, whether it's your job, whether marriage, your family, and church. And this can be quite different even in our world, where people's loyalties can be first to themselves and then to their particular group, regardless of what the right thing and good thing is. In other words, in our world, the ends often justify the means, and propaganda and power trample truth. Therefore, it is a bright light to do good and to do the right thing, regardless of the consequences to self or party. You will shine brilliantly if you live like that. Then number 6, to make Jesus king of your life and prepare to talk to people about him. This is just kind of 3:15. It's taking time to set Jesus the Christ apart as Lord in your heart. And then Peter expects that as people are doing good, doing right, living for Jesus out in the communities, there may be occasions for conversations, and some may even ask you why you have the kind of hope you do. And you need to be ready to prepare to tell them with gentleness and reverence, not arrogant, not self-righteous, but just tell them. And the way I do this and over the years is I kind of think of it like an accordion. I've got my 30-second spiel, and then I got everything in between that and 30 minutes. And usually it's about 15 to 30 seconds is what I get. When people see people's eyes glaze over and they kind of start backing up, then you shut up. Does that make sense? Don't just keep pressing them. See if they're interested, and sometimes the conversation will come back and forth. So you be prepared to speak, and you just think about what good things God has done for you and tell that. The result of this kind of life, 3:10. Whoever would love life and see good days, would you like to have that at the end of your life, to be able to say, I've loved my life. It has been a good life. You must keep your tongue from evil, your lips from deceitful speech. You must turn from evil and do good. You must seek peace, instruments of peace, and pursue it. And then God is just active in our world, in your life, others. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears attend to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. We must learn to trust this more than appearances demand. I would imagine most of us are just don't think we're any great light. I don't think I'm some great light. But you have to trust the Lord. And when he says you're a light, you're a light. Maybe you need to grow, but you're a light. Now start living that way and trusting him, even if appearances don't confirm it, even if it takes a lifetime to prove it. Trust him. Trust him. This is hard because we often don't see much evidence of the fruit in our lives, very obviously. One of my favorite authors, Henry Nouwen, who was in a really depressed state, his friend told him, he said, I wish you could see yourself as others do. And maybe we ought to help one another with that. Maybe we ought to confirm that with others more. Here's what I seeing you, because we just don't see it sometimes. I'm more aware of my flaws and all kinds of stuff. Kind of a share a story with you. So some of you know, and I'm not trying to make a thing out of this like I did something great, but last spring at a conference, they have a thing where they give a award for, I can't even hardly say it. It's like somebody that's a really great servant, okay? So we're there and eating, and we'd been talking, so we're kind of last in line. I'm not paying much attention. I know they're going to give this award at this dinner, about 300 people there. And so, because we're kind of last, and I'm mainly focused on the prime rib, getting that, and I'm eating it very slowly, because I don't buy prime rib very often, and some of you know why. It's expensive, and so I'm eating my prime rib, and paying mostly attention to that, kind of half paying attention, and it's going on. So the person directing all this has to get up and give the award. So I think I know who's going to get it. And I lean over to my wife. She's sitting next to me or near the table, and I sit across the table, and I said, "It's Todd. Todd's going to get it, and that is so great. He's just this humble servant. He's just I can't think of anybody better, because Todd doesn't get acknowledged for anything. He just puts up with all kinds of stuff for years and decades, and wow, that's going to be so awesome." And then they don't say who it is. They begin talking about some stuff. Like he was in South Dakota, and then he was in Philadelphia, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't know what's happening here. And then they announced my name, and one of my best friends was sitting there. He knew it was going to happen, so he had his camera ready, and he took a picture of me. And I thought of this too late to put the picture in. If you want to see it, I can show you. But have you ever heard, those of you who have pets and dogs, you know how they cock their head when something's weird? A dog whistle or something. That's a picture of me. I got a piece of prime rib in my fork, and I'm going. And I didn't know what to say, because I wanted to say, obviously I wasn't on the committee. And there are 100 people here that deserve it more than I did, but I tried to be gracious and thank everybody for it. But still, I don't deserve that kind of award. And you may feel that would too. I think we could give everyone an award here, right? The way they serve. And the reason I tell you that, go into all that, is because I would assume most of us kind of feel like that. We're not really great servants. We're really not great lights. But Jesus is saying to them, "You're light. Believe me. And live like that. Live like you are light." It's so important to hear Jesus' affirmation on our lives. And we must believe that every Christian is important, because you folks, you're in the workplaces, you're in the schools, you're in all kinds of activities that your kids and grandkids are in, you're in the hospitals, you're in restaurants. If ministry and outreach only depended, and I'm not picking on our staff, but it's just what tends to happen, only depends on ministry staff, not much is going to happen. Because we're often busy taking care of you. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's kind of just what we do. And then as you get older, then usually the number of people you know outside the Lord narrows. Listen, you're the light. You're a light in these communities. You're a light among your co-workers. You're light when you go to the hospital. Whether you work there or you're sick, whatever it is, you're light. Trust Jesus' words. and look for opportunities to do good and do right. I'm going to end with 4 quotes. We'll do 3 and then 1 later. And the praise team could come up now if they want to, and while I click these off. Helen Keller, blind from birth. So praise team's come up. I don't know if I made that clear. We got 1 coming, okay. Good, okay. Glad you were all listening. Wake up the praise team here. That's okay, I'm used to that. Helen Keller, blind from birth. And it's astonishing to hear her say this. You know, we long to accomplish some great and noble task. But it is my chief duty to accomplish tasks as though they were great and noble. The world is moved along not only by the mighty shoves of its heroes, but also the aggregate of the tiny pushes of each honest worker. You know, it's all working together. From Pascal. To do little things as though they were great because of the majesty of Jesus Christ, who does them in us and who lives our life, and to do the greatest things as though they were little and easy because of his omnipotence. From Sister Teresa, who worked with the poorest of the poor in Calcutta. Not all of us can do great things, but we can all do small things.